Hello, everyone. So I'm here to talk about reviews for George Marsden's book that we all read, The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. So I think that George Marsden could be seen as a revolutionary thinker in academia when it comes to introducing the Christian lens of interpretation at a widespread level. We all know that his main argument is that as the decades have passed, the space for Christian lens of interpretation in academia, and maybe even religious interpretation to a wider extent, has shrunk and been seen more and more as illegitimate. So I looked at Benjamin J. Wetzel's review of Marsden's The Outrageous Idea of Christian Scholarship. And Wetzel says that the thesis of the book remains sound decades after it was written. In our current time, colleges and universities have become more biased towards secular, left-wing, or even Marxist tendencies. Diana Stano, in her own review, says that as a Christian woman in the sciences, she finds a great degree of relevance to what Marsden is saying, and that his book should actually stimulate conversation amongst faculty and students in universities because it would enrich the learning experience. Meanwhile, James L. Sauer writes that Marsden largely is correct in his analysis, but notes that Christian scholarship, whether Protestant, Catholic, or Orthodox, is on the rise. That being said, Sauer also says it remains to be seen whether or not the Academy, in its secular and left-leaning form, really is ready to hear diverse Christian viewpoints, and also questions, though, interestingly, and as sort of a counterpoint to Marsden, if Christian scholars have produced enough professional knowledge that could be widely accepted in the Academy as it is today. Finally, we also have James Caridi, who rightfully points out that today's Christian scholars are more diverse racially, ethnically, ideologically as well, and what he says are less imperialistic than previous iterations. What does he mean by this? Well, I think he means, based off of my interpretation of his reading, that many of these scholars are not trying to push their own beliefs on other people, but rather are simply trying to share their own viewpoint, as Marsden has written about. Therefore, according to what Caridi has said, concerns among the liberal intelligentsia should be eased, and there should be more space for allowing for Christian scholarly voices to be heard and accepted within the academy. Caridi also adds that in his own experience as a scientist in academia, he's had many conversations with peers in his field that lead him to believe that faith and scholarship are not as exclusive as one might think. Now, as for my own personal opinion and experience, I would have to agree with this. For instance, my father, who is not a particularly religious person, but also is involved with science, has said that in his own personal experience in the academy, and as someone with 2 PhDs, most of the people in his field that he's encountered do believe in God and do practice religion, even if they aren't necessarily sharing it within scholarly spaces. So what does this mean as it relates to Marsden in his book? I think it means there actually is a silent majority of people who would agree with Marsden and who would share many of his views, or even if they're not Christian, but are religious in other ways, would be more willing to interpret their own or share their interpretations of their research through a religious or Christian lens, but for one reason or another feel that it is not safe to do so. So I think we're at a moment where it becomes a question of who's willing and who's not to, and ultimately that is what that challenge is what can lead to pushing forward and allowing for this acceptance. Thank you.